So today I'm going to talk about just one study from my PhD that I currently have just actually published. So I'll send the link. I'll put the link on the end. I've put the link on the end of the slides. But the study is just looking at pedagogical features of interactive apps for effective learning, and I did this using a comparative judgement study with out-of-school children. So thinking about why this research is important, tablet technology equipped with interactive apps is becoming increasingly common in primary schools to support the acquisition of foundational skills, particularly numeracy and literacy, for mainstream learners at primary age. But to address Sustainable Development Goal 4, we need to ensure that these learning methods are inclusive and equitable globally, whether that's in and out of the classroom, no matter what income that is, so low, middle and high income countries, and also with learners that may face challenges with traditional learning styles. So in terms of learning apps, the evidence suggests that curriculum-based apps can provide high quality education to children. There's global research on this, and it's shown that apps can support positive outcomes, not incomes, in literacy development, maths, science, problem solving and self-efficacy. Literacy and numeracy interventions have shown significant improvements in learning outcomes, but also attainment and motivation for these children, and that's in both developed and developing countries. It's also been evidenced when implemented both at school and in a home environment. So when they are successful, apps can offer exciting and effective learning environments that are child-centred and different to traditional classroom settings. So why now? Obviously, it's been known for a while that learning apps can be extremely important when well utilised, but the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020 has accelerated that need for good quality learning apps, because with the global school closures, it left over 1.2 billion children unable to attend school worldwide. So the dependence on tablet-based learning apps really did increase, and it emphasised the need for alternative education provision in and out of school, for obviously huge worldwide impact like this, but also just ongoing as technology develops. Despite the recent uptake after COVID-19, relatively little is known about which app features support positive learning outcomes, which is absolutely crucial when children are not in a school setting where they have the teacher support and when they are independently accessing an app. So several app features have been suggested to support learning over the last 10 years or so. There's been a lot of evaluation studies done on this. So a review of the literature led to us creating a list of 15 key features that could support child-paced learning using interactive apps. The features are listed on screen, and they are active learning, engagement in the learning process, meaningful learning, social interaction. There's 3 features that focus on accessibility, which are language demand, motor skills and autonomous learning. And then task structure, feedback, curriculum links, gamification, personalisation or personalised levelling, retrieval-based learning, direct instruction and free play. So although they may be important, it's not possible to know how important they are in supporting this learning until direct comparisons are made that have been deployed in the same context with known learning outcomes. This will be especially helpful in instances where the features are in contradiction with each other and we need a bit more clarity. So like things like free play and then direct instruction have both been said to be useful, but obviously are very different in their nature. So to understand how app features support learning, they need to be linked directly to the learning outcomes. And to do this, we need this data from the same context as I previously explained. So this is where the Global Learning X Prize competition came in. So just in case you don't know, X Prize is a non-profit organisation. It designs competitions to create technology that tries and improves big areas in the world for sustainability, such as space, education, healthcare and the environment. The Global Learning X Prize competition was run by them, and it was a 15-month field test with 5 different learning apps on handheld tablets. It used 2,700 children that were out of school and had no access to schooling from remote villages across Tanzania. The apps were supposed to encourage independent learning, and there was no teacher structure in place. There was baseline and inline tests. It was independently evaluated by RTI evaluation, and all 5 apps made significant improvements to reading, writing and math skills, and it was said to be equally effective for girls and boys. So just to give you an idea, prior to the field test, 90% of the children involved could not read. And at the end of this testing phase, the figure was halved. So it shows that it's at least somewhat effective technology in providing this basic education to children that are out of school in Tanzania. So just to show you a little bit about the finalist apps, they were 1 Billion, Kit School, Chimple, CCI and RoboTutor. The teams were from the US, UK and India, and they were multidisciplinary teams made up from researchers, teachers and app developers. The pictures I've used to show you are just like one of the activities from the app, just to give you an idea, completely chosen at random, just to give you an idea of the sort of tasks that the children would have to do. It was all open source, scalable learning software that was free to access for the children, and each village got 1 app across the participants in the village. So there was no mixed apps in the village, each one just had access to 1. There was actually 2 joint winners of the competition. It was 1 Billion and Kit School, because they made equal learning gains. And it's worth mentioning, especially in this sort of environment, that the X Prize competition did not have any requirements for disabilities or special education. So there was sort of, X Prize didn't ask for anything to consider that, and also the teams didn't necessarily have that at the forefront of their mind. But research has shown that learning apps can be useful for children with disabilities, and the creator of Kit School is very open about having a disabled son, and Kit School was originally developed as a personal project for her child. So I'd say that one was probably developed with accessibility the most in their mind. So as there were clear winners of the X Prize, along with the objective measures of learning gains, it is possible to directly compare features of the finalist apps and draw inferences about which features are most effective at supporting learning for these out-of-school children. So the study is similar to previous work, but the results of the competition are already known. So this will allow us for the first time to be able to identify which features are the most successful. And the research question that we used to investigate this was, which features characterise each of the 5 finalist learning apps used in the Global Learning X Prize? So the study that we did was a comparative judgement task, which was conducted with 41 non-experts with no prior knowledge about the competition. They were all UK based and were either completing or had fully completed higher education. The participants were told about the Global Learning X Prize in detail, but they had no idea of who won the competition, so that none of their responses were biased. They were then introduced to the 15 key features and their operational definitions, which we created with research. Has something happened? Oh, sorry, no worries. The operational definitions, which we created with an evidence base, and they also had the opportunity to clarify any that they didn't understand. Participants were shown how to use the tablets to access and interact with the 5 finalist apps. They were then asked to spend time exploring each app to familiarise themselves with the features, and during this process it was recommended that participants make notes of anything positive, negative or different that could support them in making the judgments. They were told to spend about 25 minutes on this activity, which was 5 minutes per app, but they were assured that they could spend longer familiarising themselves with the apps throughout the whole task, and were actively encouraged to do so. They were asked to engage with a range of tasks within the apps and to give both correct and incorrect answers so they could see the feedback that they got, and also just to see sort of, you know, the range of games and activities that were available to the children and what the process would be for the child to go through them. So when they were familiarised with the apps, they performed a forced choice comparative judgement task independently, with no group discussion between them. They were told to work at their own pace, and they did refer to the apps at all points throughout, to make sure, you know, they could confidently answer the questions they were being asked and the judgments they were being asked. Participants actively engaged with the apps for the whole time, and the researcher was on hand to ask any questions or to troubleshoot any technical issues that came up. So this is an example of one of the 150 questions that was asked during the task. The screenshots are just the home pages of the apps to illustrate. They would explore the actual app before answering. They wouldn't just make a decision based on the screenshot you can see. The judgments allowed the 5 apps to be compared against each of the others for all 15 of the features, which gave them a score per app per feature, which reflected the number of times the app was chosen in reference to the feature in question. So scores would range between 0, which meant it was never favoured, to 4, which meant it was always favoured, per app for each of the 15 features. So there was 10 questions for each of the 15 features, because when you're comparing the 5 apps, that gives you 10 comparison questions. Hopefully that makes sense, but I'd be happy to answer any questions about it. I know this is hard to read, it's a lot of data thrown at you, but the colour-coded table is just the easiest way to get across my points. So for the results, we conducted a series of binomial tests of probability. This was using the sum frequency counts for each feature per app across each of the 15 features through the 150 experimental trials. The table shown reports the sum frequencies. Green cells with bold text indicate results from where an app feature was favoured by participants at a level significantly more than chance, whereas red cells with bold text indicate results for app features that were chosen significantly less than chance. And for each app, the rank order of features is provided in brackets. So as you can see, the green is, you know, where an app is significantly better than it would be at chance level, and red is significantly less than chance. So as shown, for the 1 billion app, participants judged 13 out of the 15 features as stronger than competitors at a level significantly greater than chance, with only gamification and free play being selected at levels expected by randomness. So in contrast, participants preferred all of the 15 app features examined for the RoboTutor app at a level significantly below chance, which is consistent with the fact that they produced the lowest overall learning gains across the field trial. So if you were scoring them 1 to 5 in the field trial, RoboTutor got the lowest scores, and they also did in this study as well.
Sorry to interrupt that.
Yeah.
Because we're looking at this, and maybe I missed that, but the cells with no color, what does it mean?
The what, sorry?
The cells with the white ones. So
that just means that they're not significantly higher or significantly lower. They're like in the middle, but not significantly so, if that makes sense. The probability weren't significant for them.
So it is the probability chance. It is not different from the probability chance?
So yeah, it's not significantly different from chance. Sorry, I'm not
chance. Yeah.
very well. Does that make sense? So it's all those sort of middle ones that like are hovering around chance level.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Sorry. So hopefully that makes sense. But like I said, we can also go back to this at the end. I know there was a lot to digest, a lot of figures there, but I'm just going to go over the key results of what we sort of found. The results provide evidence that the 6 features shared by both 1 Billion and KitKit, so the winners, are particularly effective in supporting learning of foundational skills in these settings, and they would be autonomous learning, motor skills, task structure, engagement, language demand, and personalisation. So 3 of these features, autonomous learning, motor skills, and language demand, are centred around app accessibility, which has been highlighted in literature. Accessibility has long been said to be a fundamental barrier of education in low and middle income countries, particularly. It's not surprising that autonomous learning was shown to be associated with effective learning in this case, though, because obviously it was almost necessary, because the children were not provided with formal instruction beyond the app in the Global Learning Exercise. Apps deployed in out-of-school settings need to prioritise this ease of navigation through the content to encourage and motivate the independent learning, because they haven't got a teacher that's going to stand there and do it for them, like help them get motivated. Developers need to consider the level of motor skills required for children to interact effectively with their apps, because too high a level of precision may have a negative impact on accessibility, especially for children with physical disabilities who don't have the fine motor skills required to interact with the app content. So, for example, some of the apps had like a tracing task to trace numbers or letters, but the ones who didn't make it quite as accessible, it had to be very, very precise before it would register it as a correct answer, which obviously if, you know, the fine motor skills aren't quite there, it's going to keep saying they're getting it wrong, even if they're not, which would be very frustrating. Similarly, the language used in the app needs to be appropriate for the child's developmental age, which could be highly variable in these out-of-school contexts, especially where people have different levels of experience, like if they've been to school before, maybe when they were younger. Language proficiency has been shown to correlate with children's learning with apps, so developers should keep language as simple as possible to enhance the reach of the apps and the amount of people that can use them. The other 3 apps shared were task structure, engagement, and personalisation. Task structure has been highlighted in previous research before in primary school settings because it complements the curriculum and the use of reinforcement when learning something new. And personalisation in combination with feedback has also been suggested to improve learning outcomes as well for maths and literacy. But for an app to have a high educational quality, it should support a child's engagement, as engagement and learning do go hand in hand, as we know. And they should use active interactions and intrinsic and extrinsic motivation to do this. Something that I thought was interesting is that free play as a feature did not significantly characterise the 2 winning apps, even though research really does suggest that it plays an important role in exploration and autonomy. So play-based learning has shown to be successful in many different school settings. So play can be valuable if guided with a teacher and a learning objective. But I think the importance of task structure here demonstrates that when it is out of school and there isn't that teacher, there is a certain level of structure needed to help direct that child through the content because there's no formal guidance. So a potential limitation of the study is that participants were based in the United Kingdom for this judgement task with no direct experience of Tanzania. This meant that obviously participants may not be familiar with the context in which the apps were deployed, but the apps investigated in the study are used in other countries and contexts such as Brazil, in which learning gains have been achieved, indicating that their effectiveness is not necessarily country specific. And to conclude, the study has identified these 6 features that are associated with learning skills in low-income settings, and the combination of features that I've sort of displayed to you today appears to be key in ensuring the optimal effectiveness of learning apps in low and middle income countries where spending budgets for education are extremely limited. Any future studies should assess the reliability of this combination in other settings and contexts. And the effectiveness is likely to be influenced by implementation when it's in community-based settings, because implementation is critical. Factors relating to the environment in which the children lives, as well as individual differences for the child itself, are bound to influence the learning outcomes as well. So for a comprehensive understanding, research needs to investigate all of the potential influences and then synthesize the findings across the studies. But the implications of this research is that it should help inform design of educational apps, particularly for children of primary age in low and middle income countries, and hopefully will be useful to educators and parents, particularly with out of school children. And this really is crucial in this setting, because 244 million children are estimated to be out of school worldwide still, and 10% of global spending is wasted on poor education that perpetuates significant inequality in access to quality education. So good quality educational apps with the combination of features identified could hopefully start to resolve some of the limitations in this global learning crisis. That is everything I sort of planned to say today. So thank you all so much for listening. I'm open to questions, and the link on the slide is also the paper, the full paper, because I have only talked about a snippet of it that's just been released. So thank you.
Thank you, Beth. And congrats for the publication, recent publication.
Thank you.
I can see some clapping from the people in the room. So, you can, if anyone has any question, this is the time to ask question to Beth. She's happy to answer any question. You can use the chat, or you can use unmute yourself and put your camera on. Nadina, do you have any question that you want to ask, or should I start?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, go on.
Well, I just wondering, because I've seen some papers that focus on interventions using apps in context which has limited resources.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to hear your thoughts on that, if you think it's feasible that at the end people who live in this context, like in Tanzania and similar, have access to these apps, and which advantages do these apps have instead of other interventions that do not need technology?
Yeah. So just because sometimes when I present my PhD, because my PhD, the whole thing is about, if we are putting these apps in out of school context to help these children, what can we do to improve the implementation? What can we do to make the apps better? That sort of thing. So I'm trying to look at the holistic picture. And I think sometimes when I present, people think I'm trying to say that I don't value, I've had some very uncomfortable conversations about people thinking that I don't value teachers in this setting, and I'm trying to say apps are better than teachers and all that sort of thing. And something that I really want to make clear is that in an ideal situation, these out of school children would be taught in schools with quality teachers, and they would have the sort of education that I here in the UK am lucky enough to get. But I think these apps are the perfect sort of middle ground stopgap, in terms of these children are living so remote that they can't access education right now because they don't necessarily have the schools nearby, or the quality of school nearby, or they don't have the money to pay for the school. So I think these educational technology interventions are good as like a first step to trying to get these children an education. These children can't write a single word, so here's an app that's going to help you learn to write a single word until we can find you a teacher, until we can get you an education. And I'm not saying it's perfect. I definitely think there is lots to be done to improve these interventions, to make them a better sort of solution to helping children learn to read and write and do maths. But I do think that people at the minute are chucking lots of money into interventions that aren't as successful as they could be or should be, because they are not necessarily taking the time to look at exactly what works best and how it works best and in what combination it works best. Does that make sense? I don't know if I've answered your question.
Yes, yes. Thank you very much.
So there was a comment on the chat. If you could share the link to the of the publication.
Yes. Yeah.
And then
I'll send it as well. Yeah.
Thanks. And I don't know if Tom has any question. I see that he. No, not for now. Okay. This is the first time that I see a study where there is this comparative judgment methods that has been used. So I wanted to ask you something about this method. Yeah. If it was used, if it was used in the past, so where did you, where is it coming from? And if you can tell us something about the participants. You mentioned they were 40 and they were educated. You mentioned that, but how did you recruit them or select them, and what were the criteria for being part of this study?
The comparative judgment method, it's an established method, but it's usually used as a ranking method to mark assessments, particularly in the US, I believe. So some, you know how obviously some have just, you know, cut-offs of if you get 60 to 70, you get a B or something like that. Sometimes it's used as a ranking method. So you sort of say this paper or this paper, which one's better, this one, and then you do that as a way of ranking and marking assessments. But it's increasingly being brought into the social sciences as a judgment method in sort of this sort of context. It's still very new to psychology, but the reason we wanted to use it is because we thought it would be better than Likert scales, where you rate them 1 to 5, and people tend to go towards, like, they either stick to the middle, as I'm sure everyone here has experienced before. It's lots of 3s, or, you know, no one wants to go to the extremes of 1 or 5. And also we didn't want to have the opportunity for apps and features to draw. So we didn't want to have, you know, apps coming out with the same scores. We wanted a very defining sort of, this one is better in this feature, this one is better in this feature, rather than them having similar scores to each other. So I think it was just about, we wanted to make it, we wanted to force that choice for them, and this seemed the best method to do that, where you can't sit on the fence, you do have to pick one or the other. And my research lab in business have recently used it very successfully with some data in Tanzania, not in education, in a more businessy area of research, but it worked really well in that context. So we sort of piggybacked off that a little bit. And in terms of participants, it was opportunity sampling. We knew that we didn't want people to have any prior knowledge of the Global Learning X Prize, so we did ask them that as a sort of pre-screening, and we deliberately also picked people who weren't in the area of education as well, because we wanted it to be a completely novice, non-expert sample.
And how did you make sure that their understanding of the 15 categories were, that they, when you say structure, task, their understanding was?
So what I actually did was, at the beginning of the sessions, I gave them a booklet with the 15 features in, and I gave them detailed definitions, like my working definitions of what they were to mean. And then I also put questions. So for example, if it was the social interaction one, I might be talking about what I mean by social interaction, but then I'd put questions at the bottom where it'd be like, does this app encourage you to talk to a peer? Does this app so I'd give them questions to also think about as they're going through the app to sort of help prompt that, does this app fulfill that criteria sort of thinking. But once they'd had a read through the booklet, as a group, we all had a bit of a group discussion, and we talked about, is there anything that needed clarifying? Did anyone's understanding of meaningful learning differ from anyone else's? And we sort of set that bar of, this is what this all means. Do you all understand it? Before they started the task.
Okay, and how much time did it take to be part of this project to each participant?
It was a 2-hour research study, yeah.
Okay.
So the groups of 5.
I am really interested. I love when different methodologies are brought in psychology, so this is why I'm asking a lot of questions. I really like this.
It was, I found it a little bit like intimidating at first, because I was like, oh, you know, with really established methods, you can go to other papers and you be like, right, this is exactly how they did it, I'm gonna completely copy that kind of thing. But with this, it was a bit intimidating because I didn't want to mess up. But we did actually, I didn't mention it today because I didn't think we'd have time, but we did do a pilot study with a group of 5 people beforehand, because we wanted to check, does it work? Were they confused about anything? Is there anything that wasn't clear enough throughout? Because we really did want to make sure it was made as clear as possible and as easy as possible for the participants, because it was quite a hefty task.
Yes. Nadina.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you would like to ask or discuss?
No, actually, it's really clear everything for me. So there's nothing else.
I had a question about, yeah, I don't remember. I put a note. I'm trying to understand what I wrote. But yes, no. But going back to the to the methodology and the participants, I think yes, I was wondering if you run this again with person that have an experience when it comes to education, or with, I don't know, parents rather than teachers, if you would expect different results, because you went for people that didn't have any experience or background when it comes to education and apps. So I was wondering why, and if you would expect different results if you rerun the experiment with the different participants.
I feel like it would be really interesting to do it with parents, because it's quite likely that they would be non-experts as well in terms of the sort of education research and knowing about the global learning exercise, but they have the specific knowledge of, you know, children's learning and their own child's learning experiences. So it would be like non-experts but experts in another sense. But I am actually applying, I'm in the middle of a grant application at the minute to go to Tanzania and do it with people in Tanzania, in the education department at Dar es Salaam. So I guess they would be experts in the true sense of they were experts in education research, but also experts in the Tanzanian context. And that's really why we wanted to go, because for time, money and COVID reasons, we did it in the UK, but this was always destined to be something that I wanted to do with Tanzanian local participants. And I'd be really, really interested to see if their results would be different, because I have a feeling they would be. It's just hard to anticipate in what way they would be, but it's something that I will hopefully be doing in a few months' time.
Okay, so it is something that is happening soon.
Hopefully. Fingers
exciting.
crossed. But yeah, it would be really interesting to get the results from local people and compare them, because I think if similar results come out for that one as well, it would really strengthen the impact of the research and sort of solidify what we're saying about, you know, what makes a good app.
And thinking about the outputs of this research, of course, you published the paper. Are you also thinking about other ways of disseminating your results, writing something like guidelines or reports or different forms? Is it something that you are planning to do at some point?
Yeah, so first of all, so XPRIZE aren't technically involved with my PhD anymore, but we do keep in contact and they do sort of follow up on what I'm doing. So first of all, I think they want to help me disseminate something media-based, because of course it is publicity about the XPRIZE competition and sort of what's happening with it now, sort of an update. And then we're hoping to turn it into some sort of guidelines or a framework of what makes a good app and how to implement it. But some of my other research is looking at the contextual factors that matter the most and how we can sort of navigate those as well. So I want the guidelines to be a bit more holistic, talking about the app and the implementation factors that matter as well. So I'm sort of waiting until I've got all the information before I can disseminate it as some sort of guidelines.
And those would be the guidelines that are related to literacy and maths outcomes, or something else also? Yeah, so
well, the competition was literacy, numeracy and writing outcomes.
Okay.
But, the main focus is literacy and numeracy, yeah, generally.
It is great. I'm looking forward to see something like that. And also, you mentioned involving the media. What is the plan there?
We don't have a plan yet, but I know that we needed to wait for it to be published first, and then they are talking about disseminating it from their media channels, I think. So we're just in the process of sorting that out as well. Yeah.
This is great.
So fingers crossed.
Yeah. So I think you answered all my questions, but I know that for anyone else, if you have any other question, that is always available, right? At any point. And also she will be at the early conference in Thessaloniki, so you can meet her there if you're planning to go. Nadina will be there as well, right, Nadina?
Yeah, sure.
And yes, so I think for today we're done. Thank you a lot for joining the session. I hope it was interesting. I really love learning about this new methodology. Thank you, Beth, for bringing this here, and also interesting findings. And we will see you next month with the next seminar. Thanks a lot, and hope you have a nice day.